Support comes from Mosby Building Arts, on a mission to create remodeling experiences worthy of 5-star online reviews. See the difference at callmosby.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Sinners is a critically acclaimed blockbuster hit movie that ties together horror, folklore, and performance traditions from across the African diaspora. In the medley performance dedicated to the Sinners soundtrack at the 98th Academy Awards, the Zauli mask dance was celebrated to the tunes and rhythms of blues, swing, and hip-hop. The man behind that mask was Diadie Bathily, and he's here today in studio to share a primer on Zauli dance and to talk about his decades of teaching and performing West African dance across the world and right here in the St. Louis area. Diadie, welcome to St. Louis on the Air.
Thank you so much.
So the dance that you performed at the Oscars is one that you've done for many years. It's called Zauli, as we noted, and it's from the Ivory Coast. How did you learn Zauli dance?
Zauli dance is the fact it's a part of social dance in Ivory Coast. It's a part of spiritual dance in Ivory Coast. It's a part of life in Ivory Coast. So the high school I went to, and it's the region of Zauli, and the Guru people lives in Bathily in that region. So even the symbol of my high school was Zauli. We built it with my arts teacher, who was that was actually his first year in that school. So we built the mask in the high school. So that was the beginning, the mask and the location, and also I was so much part of African dance and research and how the dance means to us and how can you use that beauty. So I started to pursue dance and went to EDEC, École de Danse et d'Échange Culturel, School of Dance and Culture Exchange in Abidjan, the big city, and learn more about how to structure in a professional level. So from small town to bigger town, and keep on training myself, knowing Africa, there is no specific school. So where you can learn traditional ethnic dance and deeper and be able to put on culture education and also in performance so people can understand the meaning behind the steps and also the music.
Can you describe how Zauli dance looks? Because we're on radio, people obviously cannot see, but can you sort of paint us a visual picture of what Zauli dance looks like?
Zauli dance, first of all, you have to have a very a strong strength on your legs. And once your legs are moving, they are moving so fast, you feel like your body is floating. So that's a training. So the Zauli is always with the hands speaking first, and then after that, whatever the phrase is, the hands just spoke to, going to translate into the feet steps. So, and like on Google, they is listed as a very impossible dance, of course, because you have to train yourself to be able to picture this unreal body floating and the feet are going so fast, you can even identify how fast they're going. Yeah.
And the mask itself, this is a large mask, right?
It's a big mask, and the whole mask is a cover on one piece of wood. And it takes months to cover that mask. And then also the eyes of the mask are tiny, and then you have different characters on the masks. So the mask is big, and then the eyes are already tiny because you're supposed to see outside, and people shouldn't see who is in the mask because it became a spiritual thing and moving on. Yeah.
Diadie, where And when is Zauli performed traditionally, if not on the Oscar stage, as we heard?
Zauli is performed traditionally in villages, and it's used as a peacemaker. It's used as entertainment. So that's why the first president of Ivory Coast, I remember when I was younger, he was using the Zauli mask to welcome people from Europe and Western coming to the country and for negotiation about politics level. So you have the Zauli at the airport to welcome people, just like in the village, to welcome another chief or somebody coming to the village to build a well or electricity. They're always welcome. So it is used traditionally for spiritual, for welcome, but the same meaning being translated to modern life today.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have been teaching in St. Louis now for decades. And at one point, you decided to make your home here, and you eventually started your own dance company, Afriky Lolo. Diadie, how much awareness of West African dance sort of generally was there in St. Louis at that time? And this would have been like the late 1990s and the early 2000s.
Yes. And African dance was already here before I got here. Catherine Dunham brought more charm. And more charm got to, a Khan that is more charm. So he brought a lot of drummers and dancers from West Africa here in St. Louis, and they spread out around the U.S. So that's one example. There are so many examples how African dance got to U.S. or St. Louis. So me coming to St. Louis at that time, some of the people were already trained in dancers from Senegal and Guinea, but not Ivory Coast. So the fact that Senegal and Guinea is in West Africa, there is a similarity between the culture and the dance. So that makes much easier for me to take the torch and keep on moving around the country and planting the seeds of rhythm and dance, whatever I could use to promote African dance through education and physical education too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Had you ever thought that you would end up settling in St. Louis to do that?
No, but somewhere I love St. Louis. The fact it's a comfortable place. I love these brick buildings, and I'm an artist, and I like a place peaceful, small, not too big, enough to think, so I can go and conquer the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Senegal and Guinea earlier. What are the differences between the dances of Ivory Coast and those two countries?
If I take like Ivory Coast, there are over 60 different tribes, 60 different languages, and each tribe, they have their own culture dances. If I take one tribe can have over 10, because dance is so part of life. So from one tribe to another one in Ivory Coast, it's really different. So more you go far from Ivory Coast, you discover something else, completely different. So in Africa, some of them people dance with spirit coming from the ground, so they are more connected to the ground. And if I take like the east part of Ivory Coast, going to the south, it's more grounded. But when you go the north of Ivory Coast, it's the spirit coming from up. Some people jumping more up, instead staying closer to the ground like the farming. So more you study, you figure it out where the energy and the technique of that specific dance is coming from.
Mm-hmm. Were you finding that that there were certain people seeking lessons from you when you first started Afriky Lolo?
Yes. A lot of, I taught African dance all of the community colleges. And I will say most of the universities, especially dance departments here in St. Louis. And also the fact I've been teaching so much in around St. Louis and having a company, I had so many different people coming and educating themselves. It could be about the culture education, or it could be about finding something they can do physically so to make their life better.
Mm-hmm. So it was really practice then, not just sort of done for art purposes.
No, not done for art purposes, just to make people's life better. Mm-hmm. And that's always about African dance. It's a part of a life, and you have to find the exactly way it goes in your life so to make your life better.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a very quick break here, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation with Diadie Bathily. He's a West African choreographer, dancer, and founder of Afriky Lolo, and he also was among some of the performers that we saw at the Oscars just last month, performing to a medley of songs from the blockbuster movie Sinners. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
Welcome back. I'm Elaine Cha. Let's return to my conversation with Diadie Bathily. Now, Diadie, you were a highlight of the Sinners performance at the Oscars, and that performance presented a live stage version of one of the most memorable scenes in the film. And this is when Sammy, a young blues musician who's just run away from home, is singing an original song called I Lied to You in his cousin's juke joint. Now, we heard a little bit of that song in our introduction, and at the Oscars last month, you appeared on stage about 3 minutes into the performance, for those of you who want to look it up. And one reason moviegoers loved that scene is the way it showcases traditional and contemporary Pan-African dance and music. You know, Zauli dance is happening right next to juking and footwork, and those are two staples in dance ciphers and hip-hop dance competitions. How often do you, Diadie, look at contemporary dance and say, that looks a little or maybe a lot like Zauli dance?
And I believe that happens almost everywhere I go. I see the intersection between African dance and other type of dance. And it's not just that stage, it's an international festival, or, everywhere I go, I see that intersection between the culture I'm from, I learned, and the other cultures. So being on that stage, I wasn't lost at all. I saw similarity, I saw family. So together with the choreographer, it was easier to blend in.
Well, and there was a lot going on, so it's really interesting to hear that was your experience on the stage. Zauli is performed to drums, and I want us to hear an example of what Zauli sounds like. Here's Mamadi Keita's song, Zauli, from his 1998 album, Afo. And that was Zauli by Mamadi Keita. Now, Mamadi Keita was from Guinea, not from Ivory Coast, but these are two countries that border each other. What is it that makes Zauli music distinctive?
The Zauli music, it's almost like a hip-hop, or it's almost like a rap. When you start rapping, right away you line up the words and you have a message. So the style of lining up the words and the way you see it, it's the same thing about Zauli music, because the music is like the mirror of the steps. So what if you say, ping, your foot gotta go at that moment. So everything is synchronized with the dance steps. It's not like improvising. So you gotta learn the phrases to match together.
And you said that it takes a lot of strength to do this. I can see why.
It takes a lot of strength. I won't joke about it, but it's not impossible. So that's the thing. Visually, we make everything difficult, but once the body and the muscle memory try it, you say, oh my goodness, it's not that impossible. It is possible.
How do you train yourself for that?
First of all, you have to believe in yourself. You gotta love it. That's the first thing. And then you gotta figure it out about the technique. And it's not your job. That will be your teacher. If you have a good teacher, it's to figure out the technique. Each dance, where is the technique? To me, without the technique, it's hard to recognize the dance, or we may have to give a new name. But you have to figure out what is the technique. That's why I learned African dance, to figure out what is the technique from one traditional dance to another one. So Zauli, you can miss it because, like I said, the music is almost like the mirror of the dance steps. They're going together.
How many traditional West African dances do you know, Diadie?
I can teach about close to over 20.
Oh my gosh.
And it's much easier when you grow up in it, since you're little. And it's much easier. So you pursue, you teach it, you teaching kids, elementary school or high school, and more you practice, more you start to be master of it. Like I said, there are some stuff you have to go to Africa to study, to master yourself and teach yourself. Sometimes there is no school to learn this kind of a thing. You gotta go to the field and teach yourself how to learn how the culture and the steps.
Is there something that you do to keep up your own skills? Do you travel in order to meet with other dancers? What does that look like?
Yeah, I travel to, right now, I'm choreographing Sunjata. So I went to Mali, and that's the heart of a Sunjata, the history of a Sunjata. And then I have to go and find some of the old books. I gotta question people. I gotta dance with people. I got music. It's almost like a cultural research. And I come back to be able to choreograph on stage so people can see or feel the history and the dance and music from Africa.
So it sounds anthropological.
Absolutely. It is. The thing is, I know Americans, it doesn't matter the color of the religion. Everybody want to learn about that continent with 54 countries. So it is so big, there's so much in there. So African dance came through slavery, but today African dance comes through Chris Brown, who went to Africa and went to learn Azonto in Ghana. You look at some of the video for Beyonce, today you see, African dance. So it's interesting. So people always going to that continent. So that's why I'm trying to figure it out, how to teach it easily to people, because everybody can now buy, their flight and go to Africa. So how to bring Africa to people who cannot afford a flight to go to Africa.
Yeah. Do you find that it is easier to teach kids than it is adults? Not only because of their spryness, because they're young, but do they have an openness partly because their ideas about what is and isn't quote unquote right are not as fossilized?
Well, with the kids, you have to change everything to a game. And you have to figure it out, because in African dance, there is always a starting point, and age doesn't matter. So the kids, you gotta teach them about the meaning of the dance, planting the seeds. Let's plant the seeds. Everybody, let's squat. There is no space. There is no seat here. The bus is coming in an hour. Let's squat, just like in Africa. So I'm trying to collect all of the way how people dance or people farm in Africa, because the African dance technique is coming from everyday life, what we're doing, translated into dance. So that's why sometimes we squat a lot to develop those muscles and be able to get the technique. So there is a teaching process. From my research, I had to figure out some of them coming from everyday life, and it's similar to the life we have here, so people can do the correct movement. Yeah.
Now, our producer Maya Norfleet said she was in elementary school when she first learned about Afriky Lolo. What is it like to meet people all around the region, and maybe elsewhere too, who were exposed to West African dance through you and have memories of that from when they were a child?
Well, I have a lot of people around who took a dance class with me in elementary school or came or college or community college through continuing education. Some of them are coming back to the dance class when we have a performance, so we publicize on TV or radios, and they find out and they come actually to see the show. And then after the show, they'll take the brochure and then my information there. Oh, I took a class with you 10 years ago. I took a class with you, they tell me how long it's been. And it's amazing retrouvailles coming together. And sometimes they end up actually in my beginner's level in the company and start to build all the way to principal levels. Yeah.
I'd like to give it a try. Perhaps you'll see me in one of your classes.
I know where to find you.
Diadie Bathily is the founder of Afriky Lolo, a traditional West African dance company, and had a recent turn on the Oscar stage last month. Diadie, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Afriky Lolo's 20th anniversary will be celebrated with a production of Sunjata, King of Mali, on July 17th through the 19th at the Two Hill Performing Arts Center. You can find more information at Afriky Lolo, that's AFRIKYLOLO.org.
This episode was produced by Maya Norfleet.
Our audio engineer is Aaron Dorr. This podcast was mixed and edited by Aaron.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.